So, hey
Yep.
everybody, I'm here with kind of a new friend of mine. This is Josh Mackey. He's been my personal trainer through a remote application, right?
Yeah.
Trainiac is that the name of it? Yeah.
Yeah.
And so I don't know. Tell us a little bit what you do, Josh, and what your world is.
Yeah, no, for sure. So I do some in-person training still sort of like left over from it seems like a past life now, but ever since COVID, things have gone virtual a lot. And so the virtual personal training world has really exploded and it's really provided a lot of really cool opportunities. One of those is like the app like where we got connected was Trainiac, even outside of that. So like to let you know a little bit more about me, I mean, I run my own personal training, like online coaching business, Mackey Health and Fitness. I've been doing personal training since 2012. I have my health coach certification, nutrition coach certification. And so it's been since 2019 that I've been doing a lot of online work only. And obviously that picked up a ton with 2020. And yeah, it just really provided a lot of really cool opportunities, and it's neat that we got connected through the app that we did, because that's a very generalized, it just kind of connects people. But I think it was, I don't know, just a coincidence, but I mean, that's what I do is I work with people specifically over 55. My coaching programs are designed to help people reach a healthy weight, control their diet so that they can feel young again. That's a really important thing, is just to feel young again and really just find joy in like whatever's next.
That's
Um,
that's
yeah.
super cool. Yeah. So I reached out. Well, when there was this thing showed up in the App Store. I said, "Well, let me give this a try and see
Yeah.
how it goes." And somehow we stumbled into each other. And early on, one of the questions was, "Well, what is this about? What are you trying to do, Paul?" And I responded that my wife and I were about to build a home largely ourselves, and well into my 60s, this has got to be nuts. What is this guy trying to do? And so you said, what's your purpose? Some people want to run a triathlon. Somebody else wants to do a chin up. Somebody else wants to do something else. And my thing is, I want to build a house. And we can talk more about the way I thought about it. But before we get there, when you get a message like somebody wants to build a house, like, what are you thinking? I mean, from a fitness and like, okay, what is it I have to do for this person to help them to achieve a goal like that?
Yeah, no, first of all, it's great. Like you love hearing some more real, like that's just such a real life thing, right? It sounds odd, right? Not really, like not everybody's out here building houses, but everybody like having that, like that's just more tangible, I guess, than want to run a marathon. It's a great goal to run a marathon. That's awesome. I know lots of people who do that. But that building a house, I mean, that's gonna affect your day-to-day life. You're gonna live there. Like it's just there's so much into it. So I love that, and I love that when we program, we can start looking like at more functional. Like how do we functionally get you ready to do and to take on the demands of a project like that?
Can you translate functionally? I think I'm an engineer. I think I know what functionally
Yeah.
means, but I'm guessing you use it differently than I do.
No, I mean, really, we can get it, you can get really deep into the weeds with it, but in most general terms, it's literally, we're trying to come up with workouts that are going to be usable in your daily life, right?
So
And
please
so,
explain to me how burpees are usable in my daily life.
exactly. No, well, again, we can get really deep into it, but like, for example, right there, I mean, really, it's not the movement. Sometimes it is the movement, right?
Yeah.
Sometimes we're trying to use a movement that is very functional to the day life. Sometimes it's how are you training, right? So
Yeah.
you're going through a burst of energy. Your body needs to create energy quickly, and it needs to go through that energy system in 10 to 15 burpees and knock those out, get your heart rate up and be able to control it back down, get it up and control it back down. So yeah, you're not going to be like, oh, there's a hammer on the ground, let me do a burpee down to get it and pick it up. That's not what I mean by functional. But there are going to be times where you're going to need a burst of energy. You're going to need to do something hard and quick. And so you train in that way, it can be functional.
There's
Does
a
that kind of,
Yeah, it makes sense. There's a thing you mentioned. You and I were exchanging messages in the app at one point, and one of the rules that we started was you can change the weight, but don't change the reps. And I
yeah.
dutifully did what you told me. And then I said, why is this stupid rule here? And you explained something about the difference between strength and endurance. Can you say another couple of words about that?
Yeah, no, exactly. So well, especially when we're working virtually, right? I'm not there on the floor to put the plates on the barbell for you or to change the weight for you. So really, you're the one that's feeling it and how it feels.
Yeah.
I'm not there with you, but there is a reason for telling you to do 10 reps. It's not just like some random number I picked, right? But so you can change the weight to make that 10 challenging, but we ask that I don't change that because there's a reason for that 10. And research shows that if we're trying to build up strength, we want to be in that kind of 10 to 12 range. As we're starting to like focus on, bigger muscles and what we call hypertrophy, then maybe you're into that 12 and up. As you start getting to 15 and up, now you're working on endurance of the muscles. So our muscles respond a lot differently based on the the number of reps you're doing, the intensity and the volume you do of the exercise.
Yeah, so strength versus endurance. In some ways, I always thought about that as sort of the same thing, but in a way, they are different, aren't they?
Yeah, very much. Like if you're really looking for total strength and trying to lift very heavy, you don't want to be lifting lighter weights for 20 reps because that's not, again, we go back to being functional. That's, there's a time that needs to be a part of your programming. And you've noticed, we've been training together enough that you've probably seen the changes. We've gone through some phases where we are working endurance. Yeah. Now we've done a ton of full body. Like that's pretty much everything we've done is full body workouts. But you've probably noticed sometimes it's more 8 to 10, lift heavier. Sometimes it might be 15 to 20, go lighter.
Yeah. Well, I have to tell you, just a little bit of plug for Mackey Fitness. When I first started this program, I forget exactly what the exercise was, but it involved that, something in the order of a dozen push-ups. And I was struggling to get through it. And this past week I did 160 push-ups. So there's something about the
inside of a workout. You forgot to mention that. It wasn't just 160. You're doing an exercise and then you're doing push-ups, an exercise and then you're doing push-ups.
Yeah, you had given me, I think it was 16 sets of things to do. Some of them were repeated supersets and that kind of stuff. But in between each set, I did a 10 push-ups. And it's like, wow, I don't know. Maybe this Mackey guy knows what he's talking about because there's no way I could have done that at the beginning.
Now, real quick, before you scared people off, how long did that take you? The whole workout?
What do we start in August? So what is that, 8 months or something like
that?
No,
not even just to get to that, the workout. Because I bet there's some people that have just heard what you said, like, what, did you work out for 2 hours? Right?
No. It was less than an hour.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's important for people to know because there's this misconception about like, oh man, this guy's working out for 2 hours. And
I don't think we ever did a workout that was longer than 40 minutes.
No.
Except when you made me run for 45. But yeah. It's so funny because my kids look at this and they say, well, what is your trainer making you do today? And as though it's not a volunteer thing. Hey, I want to shift this back to sort of the construction space. And maybe it's not just construction, but it's places where people are doing physical work. And I want to talk about the role of fitness, maybe fitness in general, but strength in specific. And I had this idea, and I want to see if you confirm it or not. And that is, we wear safety glasses to protect our eyes. We wear, hard hat to protect our head or steel-toed shoes for whatever that purpose is. And about halfway through this, I started to realize, I think this training is like a kind of personal protection equipment of a kind. It's not the kind I buy at Home Depot.
Like how can it protect you in a workout? Do you mean just like in life? Like how can this?
The job site. So I'll give you a couple of things that I thought about. So early on, we were doing these exercises that they were single leg RDLs, Russian deadlifts, right?
Okay.
And if you haven't seen it, I'll put a video of what an RDL looks like in the background here so people can see it. But your whole point on this is about balance. It's about building balance. Well, balance actually matters when you're walking on a wall. There's a fair amount of core exercise that we're doing, right? And it's like nobody likes to do core exercise. But I get the sense that core exercise protects your back. Yeah. So in that sense, do you see that, or am I making this up?
No, absolutely. You're not making it up. I mean, there's a few things that I think correlate perfectly to what you're saying. And I think there's certain, like, there's one that may not look at the onset functional,
Yeah.
in that when are you doing that exact movement at the job site?
Yeah.
So you might, like, at just surface value, you're like, that doesn't make any, why would I train that?
Yeah.
But what you're doing is you're training the muscles to respond. You're training the muscles to react when it might not be what you're thinking about. You're
Yeah.
working at the site. You're not sitting here. It's not a workout for you. It's just working, right?
Yeah.
And you want the muscles that keep you balanced to fire and to be working when you need them to work.
Yeah.
And when they don't, that's when people trip, they fall, something happens, or they stumble, or they just get, that's just a safety side. But then you get fatigued and you can't do as much work in that day. I think one other thing that really stood out to me is one of the biggest things that I think is missed and why people should exercise is it trains your body to recover. Right. And I think this is a safety thing too, is it trains your body. Like, what are you doing every time you work out? You're kind of beating your body up a little bit and it builds back a little stronger.
Yeah.
And then you beat it up a little bit and it builds back a little stronger. And so you're training this idea of recovery.
Yeah.
And so that provides just safety down the road as you go, especially as you age. And, you hear people complain about, oh, this injury takes longer to recover. I find that happens less with people who are active because their body is used to recovering.
That's so interesting. So in the sense that, like the single leg RDLs, my favorite, by the way, you should give me many more of those.
Okay.
Please no.
Deal.
Is just, in a way, that's like PPE that keeps me from getting hurt. But the improvement in recovery is like the Band-Aid or the I don't know, the aspirin that makes you feel better and faster. It's like they fit together. It's like
it's so you don't have to take that.
Yeah, it's like safety and first aid. It's like, it's not, in my case, it's not strength for the purpose of strength or endurance for the purpose of endurance. It's protection and then healing. It is a combination. I never really appreciated that. And when we started this journey, I was just like, I should be stronger. I mean, that's all I thought about. And through the work that you've been doing, and then as I pondered it and looked at our project, I think, wow, this is like a first aid kit and a helmet sort of combined in metaphorically, right? Yeah.
And I think just as, you wouldn't recommend going into the job site without your equipment, or what do you called it? PPE. I'm not as familiar with the construction. Yeah. Personal protective. You wouldn't go into that unprepared.
Yeah.
But so often I think people go in, they don't see the benefit of the exercise and strengthening their body as a mechanism of, hey, protecting yourself.
Yeah. Super cool. Hey, I've got a question. I sometimes there's a few places where I've seen online as other people, different practices at different companies. So I've seen a construction company, they always have at the beginning of the day, they have a pre-day briefing. So this is what we're going to do today. This is what we're going to work on. They often will say, hey, we're going to have a safety moment, always wear your tether when you're on the roof, whatever the safety reminders might be. And then some of them actually have like the foreman or somebody leading the team in some pre-day stretching or pre-day like little warm-up or whatever. Does that make sense to you? What would you say to people? I don't have a foreman who's going to lead me through that, right? But what should I do at the beginning of the day or after my break in order to be sure that I'm ready for the work that I'm about to do?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. I mean, if you know that the day has a certain amount of load that's going to be required of you, you've got to manage like your energy levels.
Yeah.
Right. And it goes especially to the untrained, it would be counterintuitive to exercise before a very busy day. Yeah. Right. We think, well, that's going to take up some of my energy, but actually, as you do it, it becomes the opposite. It can give you more energy because your body gets better access to those energy systems and you're able to turn what you have in your body into more energy throughout your day. So to be specific, I think anything that's going to get your heart rate elevated earlier in the day is going to be great. We're not talking about burpees right off the bat. You don't have to roll out of bed doing burpees, thank goodness, right? But going for a walk like early in the day is really helpful just to set the tone and to get your heart rate elevated, get your body breathing. Some balance type exercises are really helpful early in the day. And these, I'm not even talking about an actual workout here. I'm talking you get up and spend 10 to 15 minutes, doing some balance type exercises and go for a 20-minute walk.
So what's an example of a balance exercise?
Well, your RDLs would be good. Would be a good one to start with, right? A single leg deadlift is another term for an RDL.
And
The
you
idea
don't
is
have to
we're
have
just
weight, right? You could just do it with or
oh
without
yeah,
weight.
yeah. Because at this point we're not training for strength, right?
Yeah.
We're training for waking up, right? We're trying to
Yeah.
wake up the muscle group. So you literally turn on your muscles, right?
Yeah.
In a way. And so when you ask your muscles to contract and be used in a certain way, you're activating them, you're turning them on. And that's just really helpful before you go into anything that's going to be physically demanding.
That's cool. Hey, there's two special cases I think that would be fun to talk about here, and then I want to talk about nutrition because I hadn't known about
Okay.
your nutrition compound, but let's get to that in a minute. Two special cases. People who are already on the job, and they said, "Wow, this is a really interesting discussion that Paul and Josh had. I'd like to get started with just adding some sort of exercise at the beginning of my day or beginning of my shift or whatever it is." How do people get started?
Yeah, that's a good question. And at the
They could
sake of
go to
sounding
Max
like
Fitness.
a
You go to Max Fitness.
I was going to say,
started.
without sounding too coachy here, I mean, the number one thing is to get help and don't be worried about like there's a stigma of like asking for help, right? Whether it's just somebody who has a ton of experience, they've done it themselves, or you actually do reach out and find a coach who has the experience to do it, or has done it with people. Like that's just, you can't overlook the power of having a coach go through it with you. But to give some coaching here, I think number one, honestly, it starts with building the habits and the consistency. If you think back to when we first started, we didn't just jump right into a program, right? And I think that's so many people. And part of that, I think it was a blessing in disguise. You were, if I remember right, you were recovering from a hernia surgery.
Yeah,
was that right? Okay. Yeah. I think that was probably the best thing that could have happened, because what it caused you to do is focus on laying this solid foundation, right? Yeah. And a lot of people, when they're early on, they're either super hyped and they're like, I'm excited I'm going to start working out, I'm going to exercise. And so they go back to this headspace of what they could do 5, 10, 20, 30 years ago. And I see that happen across all decades. We always go back to a time where we felt better and we think we can do that. And we start where we aren't, right? You have to start where you are and you have to build a solid foundation. So that, I think we focused on consistency over anything. I had a plan and I had exercises for you to do, but those honestly were less important than the fact that you were doing them. You were building the consistency. So anybody who's just starting out, I would say put a little less pressure, and you want to be safe and do exercises that are helpful at the beginning. But even more than that is be consistent. Just pick something you can do consistently, because once you have that consistency in place, then you can plug and play all kinds of exercises, all kinds of workouts. You want to do endurance, you want to do strength, you want to run, whatever it is, you can plug that into the consistency that's already in place. And so that's always the first thing I work with people on, no matter where they're at, is, hey, you show me you can be consistent early, I'm going to help you with that, and then we can build from there. Does that kind of answer?
Yeah. I think the joke I started with was, 2023 was the year of the push-up. I did one, right? And I had done a lot of cardio, but not any strength, because I used to think strength was boring, and it's gotten better. Before we get to nutrition, one more question. Anything specific? You specialize in the 55 and older category. How is training and strength building, as I think about it again, for the application in a physical job or a physical workplace, how is that training different for the older adult?
Yeah, that's another good question. And once you get started, it's actually not all that different, right? It really isn't. There's a few things that we need to consider, There may be a longer list of health history just because you have more history, right? So there may be more to consider, but the training itself doesn't change a lot once we get started. Now, so here's where the difference is the getting started. Somebody in their 20s may spend a week or two doing a few core exercises and they're ready to roll, right? They're ready to get into the program. Their body adapts just a lot faster, right? As we age, that process slows down just slightly. And it depends what your history has looked like, how long that process might take. So I would say that for the older worker, right, for a lot of people that I work with, I really stress that solid I kind of just talked about it, that solid foundation, right? The starting a little slower than you feel like you want to do. Again, that's why I say, how you started was actually, I think, a blessing in disguise, because it forced you to maybe spend a little bit more time working on the foundations than maybe you might have originally wanted to. A lot of people come in to me and they're like, all right, they do a week of the foundation exercise and they're like, all right, are we going to switch it up? Or we going to do something harder now? I was like, I know you want to. Stay with me. Trust me, right? Let's spend some time really focusing on this foundation. I promise you, a year, 2 years, 5 years from now, you're going to be glad you did.
And I've been amazed at what's easy and what's hard. There are things that I thought would be easier and they aren't. And there's some things that are like, I feel like I have the triceps of Atlas and I have the biceps of Bambi. And, sometimes it feels like that. Hey, I want to switch over to nutrition for a second.
I want to add one thing, actually. I want to add one thing to that last thing, because there is probably another difference is revisiting core and stability and mobility, like those 3 areas, revisiting those more frequently is very important for the older worker, as you're putting it. Whereas, again, go back to another decade, somebody in their 20s may not have to they should, but they may not have to revisit that as frequently as somebody in their 50s, 60s, and 70s.
Yeah, and sure, things atrophy much more quickly. It's very interesting.
Yeah, exactly.
Hey, let's talk about nutrition for a second. So here's my view of, this is my stereotype of nutrition and fitness. If I want to be one of the gym bros, I walk into the gym, with shoulders wider than the hallway, and they've got their water bottle and they pour this protein something into the water bottle and they shake it up, and then there's this big conversation about which amino acids they're getting. I feel like, I can't even walk up to these guys and say, "Hey, how are you? I don't have anything in common." What do I think about when I think about nutrition?
What?
Strength in particular. Yeah.
Like, where should your head be, versus just chugging protein shakes?
I'm another crazy person like Paul, and we want to build a house, or I'm actually a seasoned worker in the trades, and I need to start to think about nutrition other than just whatever fast food I'm going to have at lunch. What is it I should be thinking about in order to protect my body and to prepare for building the strength and balance and conditioning I need to do my job well?
Yeah, I think getting the idea past what is this going to do for me today? We get very short-sighted with our nutrition, and I think a lot of times that allows us to eat the fast food. We eat the highly processed sugar food because in a short term it might help us. I'm gonna get some energy. I'm gonna eat this and it's gonna be a little boost, a little pick me up. And so getting out of that mindset and really looking longer term and starting to look like, what does 5 years of this look like? And a lot of times people in their 50s and 60s have that history to look at, and they can actually look at, I know what 5 years of this looks like, and it doesn't look great. So having that longer term perspective is key. The other thing is just really start turning the attention to whole foods versus processed foods, and just starting to, it's not about being perfect, but it is about progressively getting better, right? The same philosophy as our workouts, right? I don't need a perfect workout. I don't need a perfect plan, but I progressively need to get slightly better. And so with your nutrition, where can I choose a more whole food versus a processed food? And I think that's, at its most basic level, and in the time we have, that would be such a key area. And that's something I really focus on when introducing nutrition with clients is, how do we choose whole foods versus processed foods? And understanding what they're actually doing for your body is helpful.
So if people want to know more about this, we can get connected with you and they could ask
Oh
whatever
yeah, oh yeah,
questions
yeah.
you have about it and that sort
Yeah,
of thing.
for sure. And if
That-
anything pops up, send
Yeah.
it to me. I'd be happy to answer that. But yeah, nutrition, we could do a whole conversation on nutrition alone. But
Maybe
it's
we
such a big
will.
part.
The lead into this, if you look at the video that comes right before this one in the series, we were laying out using extension cords to lay out the path for
Uh-huh.
a driveway, right?
Yeah, for the
And
driveway.
those
Yeah.
were extension cords. And what I found just coiling them up is, there's a lot of forearm strength in my left hand just to hold whatever that was of weight over a period of time while you're coiling it up.
Yeah.
And what I found is that, having done now 6, 8, 9 months of
Yeah.
focused regular training, it's still work because it's those things weigh things, but it's no longer, wow, I got to take a break work.
Yeah.
Which is good. Yeah. Josh, what have I
And
not
that's
asked you
huge.
about? What?
I was just saying that's huge because that just allows you, like, think of, over the course of 20 days of work, if you could get an extra hour in each of those days, not because you stayed out there and worked an extra hour, just because you didn't have to take extra breaks.
Yeah.
That's 20 hours of work that you got in, right?
Wow.
And that means you're either finishing a project for yourself sooner, or if you're getting paid for it, you're getting paid sooner, right?
Yeah.
I mean,
I think
yeah, it's
the other thing is, I don't think people realize this, but the trades require you to have work with your brain turned on. And, whether you're an electrician and you're wiring a house, or yesterday we were just thinking about how do you put the flashing around a window in a certain way. And you know what, that people think it's just bending metal and slapping it up there. It's not. It requires like a kind of careful thinking about where's the water going to go? How do I protect it? Water's going to get in. How do I get it out? When I'm physically more ready, there's more energy available in my brain to do the brain work that goes along with the trades. So I'm totally sold on this. This is great.
Yeah.
Josh, what have I not asked you about that I should have asked you about?
Oh man, I don't know. I feel like we hit on a lot of stuff. It's just so crucial, like in the beginning, to really make sure that you're laying down. This is where I thought of a good analogy was the foundation, right?
Yeah.
I mean, you're not going to skip or cut corners anywhere in your build, but you're definitely not going to do it on the foundation.
Yeah.
And so I think, our workouts or exercise is so much like that, but it's counterintuitive, right? It may not be your favorite thing to do. You're like, I don't know, what's one of the things you really enjoy about building?
About building?
Is there one project on a house that you're really looking forward to get to, like the windows or that's not my wheelhouse, but is there a single?
What's super cool for me is I spend most of my life in ignorance, and there's a few things I know reasonably well, but the things that get me excited are the things I don't know. And so as we look at this project, we're looking at this as we're paying a whole lot of money for an education. We get a house for free. And so, whether we're talking about water, putting the vapor barrier on and an air barrier, and understanding control layers between air barriers and vapor barriers and thermal barriers, and understanding how tight the house has to be, and what do you do once you've made it tight, and what do you do with the energy transfer, and how are we going to put in these ground loops so we can use ground source heat pumps, and all of that is new to me, right? From a science perspective, there's a whole world of building science. And what I think is really an observation I've had is this fitness science and building science have to come together if you're going to do it right. That's the reason I reached out to you, and I'm really glad you could take some time this morning.
Yeah, it's the tool you have that goes with you wherever you go, right? Your body. So
absolutely,
you don't put that one down.
The cool thing about it is it's not like sunscreen you have to put on; it's already there.
Yeah,
and when you go out to do your work, it's you've built that in.
And no matter how you take care of it, it's still going with you. That's it's the one that you have.
That is so cool. Josh, thanks for taking the time with me. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, no, absolutely. This was awesome. I appreciate the chance to talk about this stuff. It's good. It's fun to talk through it.
Terrific. All right. Thanks again.
All right.